For decades, the United States has reigned as the undisputed global superpower, militarily, economically, and technologically. But that era is beginning to crack, not because of war, not because of collapse, but because of one country that dares to rise on its own terms, China. While many nations admire America, fear America, or depend on America, only one country has the strength, resilience, and vision to truly stand up to it. Not just diplomatically, not just militarily, but in the most crucial arena of the 21st century, technology. And no, it's not India, it's not Europe, it's China, and here's why. Number 1. Chinese tech that built to survive US sanctions. Sanctions, bans, blacklists, trade wars. The United States has thrown everything it can at China's tech giants, yet China keeps moving forward. Why? Because China has built its own versions of nearly every American tech platform. It's one of the few countries in the world that doesn't just consume US tech, it competes with it. Let's take a look. Google? China has Baidu, the country's leading search engine and AI powerhouse. Apple? There's Xiaomi, Huawei, and Honor, offering sleek smartphones and wearables that rival or even outperform the iPhone in innovation and value. Amazon? Meet Alibaba and JD.com, giants in e-commerce, logistics, and cloud computing. Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp? China built WeChat, an all-in-one super app that makes Meta's ecosystem look like a 2008 relic. Microsoft's Windows and Android OS? China is developing its own Linux-based systems and already launched Harmony OS, a multi-platform alternative to Android by Huawei. NVIDIA's AI chips? After being cut off, Huawei shocked the world by producing its own 7nm AI chip, the Ascend 910B, defying Western expectations and sanctions. So when the US sanctioned Huawei, the company responded not with tears, but with technological defiance. They unveiled the Mate 60 Pro smartphone, equipped with advanced chips made in China. Not a single US component required. Now let's look at India, often hailed in the West as the next China. Yes, India is a rising power, but can it stand up to the US? India relies heavily on US platforms like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft. Its startup ecosystem is funded largely by American venture capital. Its most widely used smartphones run Android, a US operating system. Even India's digital ID system, Aadhaar, is hosted using Amazon Web Services. That's not independence, that's dependence. India might have a big population and democratic ideals, but it doesn't have the technological self-sufficiency to resist the US, not yet. China, on the other hand, has its own full-stack tech ecosystem, and that's exactly what terrifies Washington. Number 2. An economic superpower that doesn't need America's approval. For decades, the United States dictated who could trade with whom, who got sanctioned, and who had access to the global financial system. That's because America built the system, the dollar, SWIFT, the IMF, the World Bank, and used it as a political weapon. But China? It's rewriting the rules. China is the world's largest trading nation, the biggest exporter, and the second largest economy, on track to surpass the US in total GDP in the coming years. It trades with over 130 countries as their largest partner, while the US has slipped behind. Beijing doesn't ask for permission. It builds roads, ports, and pipelines through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative. Over 150 countries have signed on, many of them tired of being lectured by Washington. And while America threatens sanctions and waves its finger, China just keeps doing business with Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and yes, even Europe. In fact, Europe trades more with China than with the US. Germany's automakers, French luxury brands, and even American companies like Apple rely heavily on the Chinese consumer. When Washington tried to isolate China by launching a trade war under Trump, it didn't cripple Beijing, it accelerated its self-reliance. China built its own supply chains, secured critical resources, and doubled down on domestic innovation. While U.S. farmers begged for bailouts, China diversified its imports, turned to Brazil and Russia, and didn't blink.
And now, China is pushing forward alternatives to the US-dominated system, promoting yuan-based trade, developing a digital currency through its central bank, the ECNY, and launching financial platforms that bypass SWIFT. Slowly but surely, China is de-dollarizing the world, and many nations, tired of US hegemony, are paying attention. So the next time someone claims the US still controls the global economy, ask them this. If that's true, why are American companies begging for access to China, while China doesn't lose sleep over American threats?
Number 3. China's rising military power, not just for show. It's easy to underestimate China's military, especially if you've been fed the narrative that the US remains untouchable. But this is no longer the unipolar world of the 1990s. China has quietly but steadily built up a military force that is now widely regarded as the second most powerful on Earth. And some experts argue that in specific areas, such as missile systems and naval capacity, China might already be ahead. China now has the world's largest navy, not in tonnage but in sheer number of vessels. Its anti-ship ballistic missiles, like the DF-21D, often called the carrier killer, are specifically designed to deter US aircraft carriers from approaching the Western Pacific. This isn't about starting war, it's about ensuring no one dares to bring one to China's doorstep. But China's strategy goes beyond brute force. While the US spends over $800 billion annually on its military, much of it on foreign bases, outdated systems, and endless overseas conflicts, China focuses on regional defense, precision, and modern warfare technologies. Its cyber capabilities, space tech, and AI-driven defense programs are catching up fast. And unlike the US, China hasn't spent the last 2 decades getting bogged down in foreign wars. It hasn't wasted trillions of dollars in Iraq or Afghanistan. Instead, it's invested those resources at home, building infrastructure, research labs, high-speed rail, and yes, military deterrence systems. That's strategic discipline the West can only envy. Now here's the part Western critics don't like to hear. China has made it nearly impossible for the US to intervene militarily in its backyard without paying a steep price. Taiwan, for instance, is not a defenseless island. It sits within the umbrella of China's air defense and missile reach. Any attempt at interference would invite devastating consequences. Let's not forget the irony. The US accuses China of aggression for simply defending its own borders and territorial integrity. Yet, it has over 750 military bases around the world, while China has just one, in Djibouti. Who exactly is projecting power here? Western analysts often talk about freedom of navigation, but what they really mean is freedom to patrol near China's coastlines with warships. Imagine if Chinese destroyers cruised around California or Florida. Would that be seen as freedom or a provocation? China's message is clear. We don't want war, but we will not be bullied. Unlike countries like India or Brazil, which rely on Western military tech and have no real deterrence force, China can and will stand its ground. The era of American military dominance in Asia is over. Beijing knows it, Washington knows it, and soon the rest of the world will too. Number 4. China's long-term vision beats Western chaos. There's a reason why China is rising while the West feels stuck. It all boils down to one word: planning. Unlike Western democracies, where leaders change every few years and policies are often reversed before they're even implemented, China operates with a long-term vision that spans decades. Its political stability allows the country to make consistent, forward-thinking decisions that transform entire industries, cities, and even continents. While the US was busy debating infrastructure bills that barely made it past partisan gridlock, China built the world's most advanced infrastructure network. It now has over 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail, more than the rest of the world combined. Its cities are wired with 5G, smart traffic systems, and cashless payment ecosystems. In China, you can take a bullet train from Beijing to Shanghai in just 4 hours, pay for everything with your phone, and ride a fully electric bus, all seamlessly integrated. Meanwhile, in the US, catching a delayed Amtrak and fumbling with paper money still feels like the norm. This long-term thinking has also propelled China to the forefront of green technology.
While Western countries were still debating climate change, China became the undisputed global leader in electric vehicles. Companies like BYD, NIO, and XPeng are now outselling legacy Western automakers in key markets. BYD, for example, recently overtook Tesla in global EV sales, something unthinkable just a few years ago. And it's not just sales, it's manufacturing power too. China controls the entire EV supply chain, from battery production to rare earth processing to final assembly. Western automakers are scrambling to catch up, while Chinese EVs flood Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and soon even Australia and Africa. In fact, many European governments are panicking about the sheer scale and competitiveness of Chinese EVs. The irony? China didn't need Western help to build this empire. It did it with its own planning, talent, and investment. This kind of transformation doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of a centralized system that prioritizes development over division, execution over endless debate. In the West, governments often seem more focused on winning the next election than building the next generation of infrastructure or technology. In China, they're already thinking about 2049, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic, and what kind of country they want to be by then. And the people? Contrary to Western media portrayals, the majority of Chinese citizens trust their government. Why? Because they've seen real results in their lifetime, lifted from poverty, surrounded by gleaming cities, riding in world-class trains, and now driving the future of mobility. That's not propaganda, that's reality. Compare that with the US, where trust in government is near historic lows, social divisions are deepening, and infrastructure is literally crumbling. In France, farmers are protesting. In Germany, energy prices are skyrocketing. In the UK, they're still dealing with the fallout of Brexit. Western chaos isn't just political, it's systemic. China's model may not be perfect, but it's working. It delivers, it builds, and it thinks decades ahead. That kind of unity, vision, and competence, that's how you stand up to a superpower like the United States.
And finally, number 5, China's global influence without invasion. When people talk about superpower influence, they often think of military bases, regime change, and bombs falling from the sky. That's the American model. Might makes right. But China is proving that you don't need to invade countries to win global influence. You just need to build partnerships and offer something better. China now has more global influence than ever, but not because it's toppling governments or sending troops abroad. It's because it's offering infrastructure, trade, and growth to countries that the West ignored or exploited for decades. From railways in Kenya to ports in Sri Lanka to tech zones in the Middle East, China is showing up, not with warships, but with cranes, engineers, and investment. And let's be honest, a lot of countries prefer this model. They're tired of lectures about democracy from countries that themselves are plagued with inequality, mass shootings, riots, and crumbling systems. When the US comes with conditions, China comes with cables and contracts. Take Africa. For years, Western nations treated the continent like a charity case, offering aid but little development. China, on the other hand, helped build more than 6,000 kilometers of railways and roads, established universities, and brought in tech infrastructure. African leaders openly say they admire China's development model, not America's political one. And now, even in Latin America and the South Pacific, nations are looking east. Trade deals, 5G rollouts, green energy investments. It's not because China is forcing them, it's because China is the only one offering a future that doesn't come with strings attached to Washington's playbook. Let's not forget, China has never invaded a country in modern history the way the US did in Iraq, Afghanistan, or Libya. While America talks about freedom and then drops bombs, China talks about mutual development and then builds roads. In fact, the only reason China is militarizing more today is because of the growing pressure from the US and its allies. Bases surrounding China, arms sales to Taiwan, AUKUS, and countless provocations in the South China Sea. Beijing didn't start this game, but it's playing it because it has no choice. And still, China has not fought a major war in over 4 decades, a restraint unmatched by any other great power today.
So when critics scream about Chinese aggression, it's worth asking, which superpower has really shaped the world through force, and which one is building a new order through commerce, technology, and diplomacy? China doesn't want to dominate the world like the US did, it just wants to be respected and left alone to rise. And guess what? That approach is winning hearts, minds, and trade deals across the globe. In a world where most countries bend the knee or play it safe, China does neither. It doesn't follow America's rules, it doesn't crave America's validation, and most importantly, it doesn't need America's tech, money, or protection. China built its own path, its own platforms, its own people-powered future, and that's exactly why it's the only country the US truly fears. If the only way the US can compete is by banning apps, blacklisting companies, and rewriting the rules, then perhaps the threat isn't China, it's the truth. Because a rising nation that builds instead of bombs, uplifts instead of lectures, and competes without conquest is exposing a reality the West isn't ready to face. So, what do you think? Do you agree with our video? Tell us what you think by sharing your comments below. If you like what you watch, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos.